So 3.8%, less than forecasters said, and the government say they're disappointed, so they're going to make changes to bring it down.
Well, it's still double, thereabouts, the target. It's double what it was on the day that we left office, for example. And it does mean higher prices in people's shopping baskets, means higher mortgages. And critically, because inflation is coming down much more slowly in our country than in other countries, it means that the servicing cost on the massive national debt that we have, thanks to the spending that this government's doing, is now running at 100 billion a year. That's twice what we spend on defence. So it's not good for how people feel about the cost of living and the prices in their shopping baskets, their mortgages, but it's equally not good for the public finances, which are in a real mess at the moment, I'm afraid.
I mean, of course, the Conservatives have history with inflation running rampant. We won't go back to 2022 because we don't need to, because everyone knows what happened then.
Well, that was Ukraine, Russia, to be fair. So that was imported energy pricing.
I'm glad that you said that.
OK, let's go for it.
That's what the government is saying as well. They're blaming foreign factors as to why we find ourselves in this position.
So, well, if you look at where we are in inflation terms compared to the rest of the G7 countries, large countries like ours, we are the top of the league this year, and the IMF says we will have higher inflation than all those other countries next year as well. So it is down to the government's choices, because they put a lot of tax on businesses through the jobs tax. That got passed on by way of additional prices.
That's the increase in national insurance for
for employees. But they also are going to be spending a lot more, £500 billion more spending over the next 5 years compared to the plans that they inherited from us. And that's driving up prices and keeping inflation too high. And that's keeping interest rates higher for longer than would otherwise be the case.
Those are some of their choices, but you're still skirting this idea that external factors can have an impact. You blamed Ukraine and the energy crisis for what happened with your government. Why can't this government do the same thing?
Well, as I say, the best answer to that is the relative performance of our country compared to others, because all countries are...
So we should compare ourselves to others?
Well, we should compare ourselves to others. And as I say, this year, the IMF says we'll have the highest inflation in the G7, and they also say we'll have the highest inflation in the G7 next year. And if you look at most of the comments from economists, the Bank of England and others, they do recognise that inflation is proving to be very sticky, particularly in our country. It's being very slow to come down. And that's because of those choices that the Chancellor has taken. What she's got to do is cut spending. Right. And we set out in our conference how we would make major savings across government, 47 billion. If you do that, then you have the room to start to bring down taxes, grow the economy and get inflation under control.
Do you think you're making the arguments and it's being received? I mean, your poll numbers are terrible. 47 billion, you said you're going to be able to cut. And you're going to cut it a lot from the welfare bill, where you have experience. But you'll cut from the welfare bill, which many will say does need to be looked at. But there will be concern that some of the most vulnerable in society may well miss out under these plans that will reduce the tax burden.
So the most important thing on welfare is that people come off benefits and into work, because work is the best approach, not just for the economy, but for the individual, the discipline of going into work, the kind of social interactions you get. It's good for mental health. Work has to be right at the centre of all our thinking on welfare. And that's principally what we're saying. But we're also saying that things like the civil service, the size of government, which has expanded since 2016 by 37%. We've got over 500,000 civil servants now. We should be taking that back to the size that it was in 2016 and before the pandemic. Those things are achievable. And if you take those, tough, sensible choices, then you can start to bring taxes down. Then you can make the cost of living pressures easier for people. But there's no evidence that the government's going to be doing that, I'm afraid.
So, Mel Stride, a couple more topics I want to get to. You talk about that's your economic cell. The party seems also to be having something of a say in terms of the culture of this country. Your colleague, the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, has talked about integration, and most recently has said that he would ban the burqa given the opportunity. Would you ban the burqa?
So it's not our policy as a party to ban the burqa, but I do recognise, and Kemi recognises also, that there are circumstances in which it's perfectly reasonable to require somebody, for example, to not be covering their entire face.
Which circumstances?
Well, at work, in the workplace, it's perfectly reasonable, I think, for an employer to say, well, I'm afraid, given the nature of the work that's going on here, that's just not something that should be done. Similarly, and Kemi has made this point, that at the surgeries that MPs hold, I think it's quite reasonable, for example, if somebody's to go in and have a conversation with a member of Parliament, that they should be asked to identify who they are so that you can actually see who they are. So I think there are issues around that.
Right. I mean, it's alliterative, but, it's the niqab that covers the face. It's not the burqa that necessarily
Yes, indeed. The burqa is one piece that covers all.
Right. So
yes.
it's not policy for the Conservatives to have it banned as Robert Jenrick says he would want it to happen? Because your chairman, Kevin Hollinrake, says it's not policy yet.
OK, so I think Kevin was expressing a personal view, and that's fine. Everybody has personal views about these things. Well, I've expressed my personal view, which is I think there are certain circumstances in which it is totally appropriate to say that it's not right for somebody to be completely covered in that way. But at the same time,
environment, but you're not thinking in a work environment, but you're not thinking broadly in society.
That's not what I'm saying, because that is not the policy of the Conservative Party on that issue.
I mean, critics said that Robert Jenrick was being anti-British by saying that. How would you describe what he said?
Well, no, I don't think he's being anti-British at all. I think he's concerned about integration and that. As a culture, British culture, that we get on well together across our various communities. And I think that's a very British thing to want to see happen.
I'm glad you used that word, because I had a conversation with Mr Jenrick a little while ago. It didn't go very well. And then I had a conversation with your colleague Nick Timothy, which went a bit better about integration. And the same challenge keeps coming back to me. When you talk about integration in this way, how do you expect for communities to cohere, to come together, when it feels, in some of the language, that it's divisive?
So I think divisive language, by definition, is very, very unhelpful. And I do think tone and the way in which people express this... I'm not going to get drawn to that. Everybody has their different way of expressing things. But I do think those things matter. But I think there's an overarching point here, which is also about net migration and about illegal migration into our country. And I think part of the tensions are definitely arising because illegal migration in particular is now out of control. I mean, you've got a government that said they would start stopping the small boats coming across. We've seen quite the reverse. We've seen
you guys didn't do so
record.
Well, either did you?
Well, we did have the Rwanda plan, which was up and ready to go after the general election, and it didn't. Well, it wasn't operationalised. It was scrapped by this government. Now, there is clear evidence, though, that deterrents like Rwanda really would have worked, because we had a scheme with Albania where we had a return scheme, and the numbers coming across from Albania dropped by 93% overnight. And when Rwanda, the legislation went through, what you saw was a number of illegal migrants leaving Northern Ireland and going to the Republic of Ireland to get away from our jurisdiction. So that shows that it would have worked had we had an opportunity to operationalise it. But of course, we lost the election and the government scrapped it, I'm afraid.
OK, so Mel Stride, I will leave it there with you for now. Thanks very much.
Thank you.